When I was 17, I started teaching English to young people in my hometown, Yamanashi. I had so much anger and frustration toward myself and the State School of English Education in Japan. It didn't make any sense to me. Why I have to translate every single sentence in the textbook? Why I have to memorize all grammar rules and terminologies without actually using them in context? Those meaningless education drove me crazy. I just wanted to express how pointless it was to study for an exam that won't prepare for anything in this globalized society. After 1.5 years of teaching, I began to notice something interesting, something unexpected happened to me, not to my students. My English score started to skyrocket. I didn't study for myself, I just taught English to my students. But despite making no effort for myself, I was ranked 8th in the national mock exam. It was a great discovery for me. Teaching actually helped my learning. So I made all my students teach other students. And more students came to my school. Then, during this time, I was lucky to get accepted into TEDxAoyamaGakuinU University. But there was one problem. While I was enjoying my university life in Tokyo, somebody had to take care of my students in Yamanashi. The first potential candidate was my first ever student, who was actually the weakest in my school. So, against all logic, I made him teach. After a few months, another miracle happened to this student. His English score also skyrocketed. He got into TEDxAoyamaGakuinU University. But that wasn't the end of his story. He ended up working for the Japanese embassy in Washington, D.C. The point is, the more you teach, the more you learn. The more you take an ownership of the content, the better their own learning becomes. So a lot of students got engaged in the cycle of learning by teaching, which I call LRT system, learn, review, teach. First, students learn from other people. They review what they have studied, and they teach other students. They're not studying for themselves, but they're preparing to teach. This gives them lots of pressure and makes them responsible. At the end of the whole process, students gain a sense of accomplishment by sharing what they have learned. The benefit of teaching is that you can be a strong near-peer role model or mentor. So this has become my approach. Teach once, and then hand over my role to other students. As it turns out, my experience is actually supported by existing research. Take a look at this. This is a learning pyramid by the National Training Laboratory. They found that lecturing is one of the most ineffective methods of conveying information. At the other end of the scale, when students are forced into the role of teaching, they're able to retain about 90% of the information they teach. So it makes total sense to make students teach other students. To make this even more intensive, I decided to hold an English camp where students maximize their learning by teaching. The teacher of these camps are, of course, my students. And as the years went by, more and more people came to this camp. By the time I was 24 years old, I had taught over 500 students, but I wasn't quite satisfied. I felt I wanted to have a bigger impact on society. So I went to a graduate school in the UK for 3 years, and then came back. Then Tactopia started. Tactopia is an educational company currently based in 5 different places in the world. Our working ideology is that the combination of diversity and creativity leads to a co-creative learning environment where students gain the maximum profit. After a lengthy discussion with the team, we decided to hold an English camp called Hakunetsu English Camp. Hakunetsu means heated or excited in Japanese. The concept of the camp is very simple. Students will teach by learning and teaching. The students will teach what they have learned from global students. Let me break down the flow of the camp. First, students meet global students from diverse backgrounds. Last year, we had 700 applications and selected the best 12 global students. Second, they exposed to the contents, what the university students are usually studying at their respective universities. And they discuss how they can reteach the information at the end of the camp. And finally, they create a happiness lesson and teach as a final presentation. Over the past 10 years, we have held so many camps around Japan, believing teaching helps learning. However, I noticed there is more important role behind learning by teaching. That is meaningful interaction. Meaningful interaction is to create quality time with people. When you teach other people, you witness so many meaningful interactions within the communication. So, meaningful interaction was key to the success for the students. Let me share one story with you. This is Nayu. She is the first junior high school student from the countryside, Totori. She was very shy. She spoke almost zero English at the beginning. She actually lost her way to the camp on the first day and cried. I was so worried. I even talked to her teachers how we could help her during the camp. All I had to do was watch and wait. On the final day of the camp, she came to me and said, "Sensei, 英語で好きな色って何て言うんですか?" I said, "What color do you like?" I then saw her walk up to each and every global student and very carefully say the sentence. And she gave them origami in their favorite colors. And this is Nayu crying after she received these meaningful instructions. She became connected with this global student. They understood with each other through this meaningful interaction. The quality time, which I call meaningful interaction, it's very important in education. Meaningful interaction is to sympathize with how other people feel, to share the happiness within the communication. It stimulates learning and inspires great conversations. Meaningful interaction is to make people moved, inspired, smile, and sometimes even cry. I believe meaningful interaction is similar to the communication between a mother and newborn baby. It is about dealing with matters with great care and affection. Teaching is not about transferring knowledge to other people. Teaching is about making this meaningful interaction. When you interact with students as an educator, please bear in mind that the interaction, whether the interaction is meaningful or not. Thank you.